We're going to be talking about God frequency. We're going to be using the creation story. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to talk about from Genesis, the first chapter, and we're going to cover the creation story. This is not going to be, as it were, a religious story. This is basically identifying who you are as divine creators. And what we're going to do is basically give you some tools so that you can begin to understand how to manifest the life that you desire. Again, you're doing this 24/7. You're always creating, but a lot of times we're doing this unaware. So what we're going to do is give you some tools that you can begin to manifest the life you desire. And like I said, we're going to be coming from Genesis, the creation story. But listen, how you doing, Juice? We're not talking about some entity outside of you. A lot of things that the scriptures did, they did it in code. So when the religious writers were creating what we call the Bible today, as well as many other spiritual books, they use coding, and they use the coding of story. So we're going to talk about how this story applies to you in your everyday creation. So we're going to be talking about the 7 days of personal creation. And when we're talking about 7 days, we're talking about your individual day. Throughout the day, you're creating from the moment you wake up to the time that you retire and go to sleep, you're creating. And even after you go to sleep, you're creating. So we're going to talk about getting into God frequency of who it is as that you are as a divine creator. So let's go on and get into this. Now, understand this. What I'm going to do is use a acrostic called creator. And through this acrostic, we're going to begin to discover who we are as creators. I was talking to somebody in my Facebook group. She had put out a post, and the post basically said something to the effect that she didn't believe in parallel universes, that she believed that, God was sovereign. And I said, well, why can't God be sovereign even in parallel universes? And it dropped down in my spirit about the creation story and how we were the gods creating. And like I said, we've taken the creation story and we've put it into the hands of the creator. But it's said through the hermetics that as within, so without. And as without, so within. What does this mean? As above, so below. What we see at a micro level is done at a maximum level. So no matter what you're seeing at a cosmo, as it were, this is what's also happening on the within. And what's happening on the within is happening on the without. So how does this apply? We're going to first talk about consciousness. I said we're going to be using acrostic. So in this acrostic, the first letter is C. You have to understand that you're a creator. This is day one. From the moment you wake up to the time you retire. Often I'll say from Genesis to Revelation, this is your story. Now, what we're going to do is talk about your story in the creation story. So in the beginning, it says, let there be light. Light is always awareness. Once you become aware that you're creating this thing called your reality, as with each and every person, and collectively we're creating reality. But we're just talking about you creating in your world from your imagination. It says, in the beginning, God said. I like to say that God is the good that one desires. We're not talking religion. What is it that you desire, creators? What is it that you want to manifest in your life? Right now, you're vibrating something. You're being something. Now, you say, well, I don't like what I'm being at this moment. By the end of this discussion, you'll have different tools to allow you to be something else if you desire. But you'll understand how creation takes place, why you're creating. Like I said, everybody is professional manifestors. Most of us are doing it poorly, but it doesn't negate that we are professional manifestors. So first and foremost, you have to understand that you are creating your day right now. My mentor, Mr. Linda, will often say that We're always thinking ahead of our evidence. See, we believe that I thought that yesterday. I let that go yesterday. But that thought did not fall into yesterday. It advanced into our future. So what happens is, I say it often, but I have to repeat it for those people that may have never heard this. Reality is the mirror. So whatever you're imagining is reflected upon the mirror of reality, and then it's outpictured into what we call your world. Divine teacher, the master teacher said, you can know a tree by its fruits. Fruits are the lifestyle, what we're outpicturing in what we call reality. So if you're not happy with your fruits, the wonderful thing is once you become consciously aware, oh, I'm creating this. And if I want something new, then at the moment of now, I have to begin thinking about what it is that I want to be, do, or have. So first and foremost, the light, let there be light, is you becoming aware that you are in fact creating your day, good, bad, or indifferent. The universe, God, source, is no respecter of person. Universe has to give you what you're picturing in imagination consistently and persistently most often. It has to. It can't do otherwise. And we'll talk about you being given dominion. But you're given dominion on your predominant thoughts, words, actions, feelings, states, attitudes, dispositions. And we're getting ready to get into that. So just be mindful, creators, that you are in fact creating. So first and foremost, the C stands for consciousness. Become conscious of what it is that you're giving your attention to consistently and persistently, morning, noon, and night. So the second day, we're told that divine intelligence separated the waters and also the sky. So there was a separation, and we're going to talk about this separation. You have to distinguish by what it is that you're giving your attention to. You redefine. Most of us think that we're on this cycle, and on the cycle that this is who I am, and we think that it's fixed. Every day, you're being recreated. You're not the same person. As much as you believe that you are, you're not the same person that you were even a moment ago. If you had an aha moment, something that said, oh, I never thought about that, you've been recreated. And we're being recreated moment by moment, not day by day. We think that I'm the same person that I was even 10 years ago. But if you, how you doing, sir? Good to see you. If you really reevaluated your day, your moments, you would see that every moment, if you go to a quantum level, you would see that this thing called you is always in flux, always in change, always being rearranged. So you begin to redefine your day. This is the R in the creator acrostic. You got interstates of high and low. When you begin separating by way of gratitude, what happens is you begin to vibrate more to be thankful for. When you're operating from fear and doubt is also a frequency or vibration. So when you're operating from fear and doubt, then of course, the only thing that you can manifest when you're operating from fear and doubt is more to be more fearful and doubtful about. If you don't take anything away from what it is that we're talking about today, you're a frequency system, you're an energy system, you're a spiritual being having a human experience. But who you are isn't the humanity. The humanity is always changing. This earth suit we call a body isn't fixed as much as we think that it is. So whatever you clothe your energy, your spirit, in by way of your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your states, your attitudes, your disposition. That's what's going to be outpictured in this thing called reality. So you refine your day moment by moment. The second you get up, creator, you're the creator in the creation story. That's you. That's not some infinite intelligence, some being. It says that we're the Elohim, the one made up of many. So when we talk about the creation story, and it says, God said, let us make man, woman in our image, in our likeness. You're the God saying. I know that's hard for many of us to believe. It's a parable about you. It's a parable about your day and what it is. It says, decree a thing and it shall come to pass. You're the decreer in your story. If you're living it, it's your story. And for each and every one of us, let's say 8 billion people, each one individually and collectively is creating this thing, this matrix called reality. So now, as you realize that you're creating, you begin to redefine, like I said, by your attitudes, your dispositions, your states, what it is that you're holding in vibration. It says, to him, her who has, whatever it is that they have. We're going to talk about the birds in a second. But everything creates after its kind. What kind is that? It says, let us create man, woman after our image and our likeness. Because you are an infinite being, an eternal being, you can't help but to create after your image and your likeness. What do I mean by that? Look around you right now, and you'll see all these things. I got lamps, I got bottles of water, I have pens, I have microphones. This all started in somebody's imagination. Everything that you have in your life, good, bad, or indifferent, started off as a image pictured out or imagination. At this moment, you can begin changing your imagination, redefining what it is that you believe about reality. Now, just because it doesn't seemingly happen in an instant, sometimes in a week, in a month, in a year, we say this stuff isn't working. It's always working. The problem is, for most of us, we've held the vibration for the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and we want in an instant to change our mind about whatever, money, relationships, health. And we want in a moment, because we've just changed our mind, we want to plant the seed, and we'll talk about seeds in a second. We want to plant the seed and say, I want that harvest immediately. And so when the harvest doesn't show up immediately, we say, well, this stuff doesn't work. I might as well stop doing this. Let me say this, creators. You can't stop doing it. Most of us are doing it on autopilot. The best thing that we can do is begin to direct our own inner conversations. It says, he, she that directs their own inner conversation shall be shown salvation. This is not religion. I know that we've been communicated and taught that this is religion. Salvation is what it is that you want to be or have. So when you begin to direct your inner conversation in the moment of now, and you stay on that path, that frequency, consistently and persistently, it's going to begin showing up in your world. It can't not. Everything that's showing up in your world is the vibration that you've held up until the moment of now. Everything that will show up in your future, everything's happening now. There is really no time but now. But we see past events, we see future events, but they can only happen in the now events. You have to understand, creators, that you're creating. You can't not create. You can't not manifest. You can't say, well, this stuff doesn't work and I'm just not going to do it anymore. You're going to be doing it, whether you're doing it unconsciously or consciously, whether you're doing it on purpose or by happenstance. why not start creating your world according to what it is that you want to be, do, or have? Okay, so you do that by redefining who it is that you want to be, do, or have. And that's really seeing yourself differently. That's the separation of the waters and the sky, and you starting to distinguish who it is that you want to be, do, or have. Let's go into the third day. This is the establishment. This is separating the land from the seed. The seed is the ground, your mind, your conscience. Master teacher talked about seeds falling on a rocky soil. This is your imagination. Some seeds took and they germinated. There's always seeds that are germinating. Unfortunately, the seeds that are germinating are not the seeds that we want to reproduce. Your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your states, your attitudes are seeds being germinated in your consciousness. This is the soil. This is the third day, the dry land. You determine what's being cultivated in the dry land. I'm trying to get my mouse to work here because I'm scrolling down on this screen here, so give me a second here. As you decide what it is that you want to give your attention to, the dry land, what's going to happen is you're going to give forth a harvest. And in giving that harvest, give me a second here. I want to make sure that I'm not stuck on this page here. Life always gives you tests. And what you do with the test, you keep moving. We'll figure that out. As you look at what it is that you want to manifest in your life, you have to be mindful. We talked about this earlier about awareness. Everything is producing a harvest. When we talk about the creation story, you are, in fact, the creator being discussed. So when we go through the 7 days, we talk about the dry land. Then we begin talking about the birds, and we talk about the fish. These are levels of awareness that you begin to become mindful, as it were, of what it is that you're creating in the moment of now. So when we're talking about the ground, you can't not reproduce in the ground. Just like people say, well, you know, this law of attraction stuff doesn't work, this law of assumption stuff. Don't get caught up in the names. The names are things that, human devices, that we've given a thing because a lack of, it's our nature to want to, as it were, to give a name to something. In the garden, Adam, man, male, female, maybe even them, was told to give names to every creature. You are that man, that woman that's given a name to the creatures. But the name that you're given is what the creatures is the life, or what we call reality. So events happen in your life. And you say, as that creator, that's good. And so you start seeking the evidence of that thing that you've called good in this thing called reality. And so because you've decreed this thing to be good, you start seeing the evidence of this thing that you call good. You say, this is bad. So because you've decreed, it says, decree a thing and it shall come to pass. You start calling this thing bad, whatever bad is. Then you start seeing the evidence of the bad. Now, it's funny. Two different people can see the exact same event. One labels that event good, another labels that event as being bad. So what's the difference? The difference is the beholder, you. So if you start looking at an opportunity and you say that money comes to me easily and effortlessly, for example, you'll start seeing the evidence of money coming to you easily and effortlessly. Now, because we have internal programming, sometimes this doesn't happen as it were overnight. Sometimes it takes a process of you continuously pouring new information into your mind, new information into your mind. Pretty soon that new information being poured into your mind clicks, sticks. It becomes who it is that you are. And this is why we can see people that we haven't seen for years, and they start regurgitating the old stories that they remembered about who they believed us to be. And if we're not careful, we can revert back into that person. But when we understand that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and I can clothe myself in any persona: success, wealth, health, loving relationships, and I can become that person. The only difference between you and anyone else is what it is that you're vibrating at the moment of now, and what you continue to vibrate at the moment of now. So let's say better health. You start operating from a place of better health. You stop doing certain things that weren't serving you. You start doing more of the things that serve you in the story of better health. You take on a new program. You take on a new download. You take on a new belief system. As you take on this new download consistently and persistently, over a course of time, that's the new suit, the new outfit that you've clothed spirit in. So now that becomes your new identity. And over a course of time, people will start to identify you with the new persona that you've clothed yourself in. Like I said, far too often we think that who we are is fixed. And this is why people come up with things such as imposter syndrome, for example, because they believe that who they are, that they've clothed themselves, the ideologies that they've clothed themselves over the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years is who they are. That's the illusion. Again, I go back to what we said earlier. Yes, I love him. I love him as a teacher. I've studied a lot of his work. I know that back in like 1988, I'm a Jacob is a teacher, was a Mexican teacher, scientist, neuroscience study, and he talked about the lattice. And in talking about the lattice was like the matrix. And whatever you hold in the lattice or the matrix was what was going to be outpictured. And first and foremost, it started in your mind. But whatever you held in consciousness, that was what was going to be outpictured in your reality. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Absolutely love him as a teacher. And they never did discover whatever happened to him. But I hope that wherever he's at, he's doing awesome work continuously. But we benefit from his teachings and other teachers. Another teacher that I liked was a gentleman that talked about the holographic universe. Again, kind of merging on the same theories and works as Jacobson, Jacob. So yeah, when you start looking at what it is that you're giving your attention to, and the wonderful thing is when you start looking at, you know, these teachers, these scientists, these neuroscience, these doctors and so forth, quantum mechanics and so forth, you realize that they start lining up with what we call spiritual teachings. Universe is always out picturing this information, this knowledge, this insight. And it comes in various forms so that you can see that, oh, they're saying the exact same thing. They're just saying it in a different way. The stuff that I'm teaching on a weekly basis and so forth isn't something that I've come up with. This is stuff that I've studied, stuff that has been given to me as a spiritual download many times, stuff that has been imparted to me by great teachers, as was brought up just a moment ago. And when I get the information, then what I do is begin to communicate to you what's been given to me. So I only act as a conduit. I'm not the originator of this information. I'm just a conduit of the information, giving to you what's been given to me. So I want to go back. My computer finally updated. So we talked about the seeds of what it is that you were sowing. I want to talk briefly about day 4, because I want you to have each day. I don't want to bypass any day. So give me a second here to scroll down to day 4. Computer's doing something really funky here. But when it happens like that, I say, this is really something they're supposed to have. When you start getting glitches and things, I'm like, oh, they're supposed to have this stuff. So I want to make sure that I give it to you as well. So give me 1 second here. The next thing, this is actually, I'm glad I didn't skip this. We've talked about the ground and the seed. So what it is that you're giving your attention, you're sowing into the soil of reality, and that's what's going to be outpictured. The 4th day talks about the sun, the moon, and the stars. This talks about alignment. Many of us are not manifesting what it is that we want simply because of the 4th day. I'm using the analogy of the 4th day, but we're not in alignment. It says, how can two walk together unless there's a spirit of agreement? Many of us are not in agreement with the thing that we say that we want to be, do, or have. What do I mean by that? I use this scripture often because it's relevant. It says, to him, her who has, more shall be given. We're talking about frequency. We're talking about vibration. What you hold in consciousness, what you hold in frequency, what you hold in belief system. It says that as a man, woman thinks in his or her heart, so has she, so does she, so is she. I added those other things, but basically it says, so are they. We say verbally, and there's nothing wrong with starting to affirm before you get to the place. It says, let the rich say that I am, let the poor say that let the weak say that I am poor. I just messed that scripture up. It says, let the weak say that I am strong. Then we add to it, let the rich say that I'm poor, but that's not in scripture. When we begin to affirm what it is that we're not seemingly at the moment. Now understand that you're a spiritual being. You're all things at any given moment. You're infinite potentiality at any given moment. Now, you may not be aware of that, but it doesn't make it any less so that you are. And this is why we say be mindful of what you link to the phrase I am. I am is your eternal consciousness of who you truly are. But whatever you link spirit with, I am with. I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm wealthy. The frequency begins to align itself with that I am statement, that I am belief, that I am frequency. Far too often we've I am'd ourselves out of everything that it is that we want to be, do, or have. We've talked ourselves out. Says, I'm not smart. I'm not healthy. I'm in poor health. I'm so sick. Those are proclamations, decrees for more of the same. You have to understand that whatever you clothe spirit with, you're a spiritual being having a human experience. Absolutely. B. Johnson says, listen, and let me say this, B. Most people don't like hearing that word. I'm going to use a curse word, a profane word for most people. It's called discipline. The D word. Most of us don't want to discipline our mind. We don't want to be mindful of our inner conversation. We don't understand the power of imagination. So We do this stuff haphazardly and we say it doesn't work. No, it absolutely does work. But as B. Johnson stated, that you have to begin to discipline, practice self-discipline, and it only takes initially a few moments a day. Everything that you have in your life right now, good, bad, or indifferent, learning to tie your shoes, learning how to tell time, learning how to do multiplications, everything that you do requires the same effort. We don't understand really how complicated it is to do something like getting a glass of water, because we do it so often that we take it for granted. But you've created the habit in the skeletal system, your muscular system, the cellular system. You learned how to do these things through repetition. Your money, your loving relationships, your better health is all on the other side of you learning to take disciplined action. And when I say discipline, I'm just saying doing something consistently and persistently long enough that it becomes habit for you. Some say that it takes 21 days, others say it may take 30, 60, 90 days. But you do what it is that you say that you want to be, do, or have long enough for it to become a part of your lifestyle. You do that, you're going to exceed probably 97% of the population, because the truth of the matter is most people aren't willing to do what it requires to become the person that they say that they want to be. That's just the truth. And so this is why, if I told you, well, only thing you have to do is just kind of think in your mind for a few minutes a day and you can have everything you want, my channel would have hundreds of thousands of people, because everybody seemingly wants that which they must do for themselves. They want something for nothing. There's always a price, even if it requires, and again, if you're getting exactly what it is that you want to be, do, or have, keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to change anything. But if there's other things that you'd like to see manifested in your life, then you have to clothe yourself, take on a digital, mental, spiritual download, and begin. Now you say, well, Coach, how do I take on this mental radical change? Normally, the question is, what happens with a radical change? With a radical change, normally what happens is somebody gets to a place where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they've come to their wits' end, and they say, you know what, I'm willing to become whatever it is that I need to be. And they make a radical trend. Listen, somebody has a bad accident and an accident almost ends their life. They said, you know what, that drinking almost killed me. I don't want to do that anymore because, and so that person, a lot of times with a radical change, it often requires a radical event, a radical state of mind, something in your life. You know, Tony Robbins tells a story many years back. He was living in a one-room apartment. Everything was in that, his sink and everything was in that. And he was like, he said he was washing dishes out of his bathtub and so forth, because it was just that bad, you know. And he went to this seminar and they were teaching this program called NLP. And he said, you know what? I have nothing to lose, and where I'm at is not where I want to be. He was just frustrated. He was like, as he stated in his story, he was like 38 pounds overweight. He didn't know where his next monies were going to come from and so forth. And he linked to this thing called NLP. That was his radical change. Juicy, do me a favor. Love what you got there. Give me less of it so I can read it, because when you give me so much of it, YouTube is only going to give me like a few seconds of it, and I want to make sure I get all your information that you're talking about. But so if you could reflash that to me, but give me half and then maybe submit the other half, or how can I say it in a way that Coach and YouTube will allow Coach to see it? Dead bang on. Likewise, B. Johnson, give me less of it. I only can get through, they only give me like a second to see what it is that you're putting up on the screen. And so if I don't get it in that second, I can kind of get the gist of it and talk about it. So I know that me and Juicy and B. Johnson are on the same page. So I appreciate that. But give me less, or say it succinctly in such a way that you can say it in less words, and I can put it out there to the audience that's listening. So I appreciate you. I thank you for sharing, and I want your input. So give me less, so that, because they only give me like a second to read it. So, and then it just kind of goes away. But listen, guys. So radical change. Something has to happen that you say, listen, I want to be in a loving relationship. I want more money, whatever. And what I'm doing right now is killing me. You come to your wits' end. But there, in order to experience radical change, your why has to be big enough. And most people don't most people's why simply isn't big enough to make the change. You know, person finds himself on the street, like the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son. You know, he's sitting there and he's eating, the pigs are eating better than him. And he says, in my father's house, I had everything that I wanted and needed, and I didn't want for anything. I'm going to go back home to my father's house because this lifestyle isn't working. There's something, my radical change. I was a kid. I grew up in Ohio, and I grew up in an environment of alcoholism, you know, what we would call abuse today. I mean, as far as physical abuse, the discipline that my mom practiced, she practiced what her mom practiced, and what her mom practiced, and what the slave owners practiced. That's just what it is. I realized as an adult, oh, we were just learning how slave masters discipline their slaves, and parents started using the same disciplinary actions to discipline their children. Point being, I knew that I did not want to stay and be in that environment. I didn't want to see myself 10 years, 20 years, 30 years out in the same environment. It's like when I got out of the Marine Corps, one of the things that I did in the Marine Corps, I was what they call a Marine security guard. That was like one of the cream of the crop positions. I was in embassies. I was guarding embassies. I was the first person that you saw when you went into an embassy in a foreign country. It was the Marine security guard. That was me. And so when I got out of the Marine Corps, I started looking for employment. And everywhere that I went, this is for a reason. This is on point. Everywhere I went, people wanted to put me in security. Oh, he's got this fabulous Marine security guard position, and you know, he got all these credentials for security, and they wanted me to be in security. And when I started having those interviews, I foresaw myself 20, 30 years out, you know, this overweight security guard, and I'm not hating security guards, but it wasn't for me. So I had some money that was earned by way of, I was contributing to what we call the VEP at that point, Veterans Educational Program. And the thing at that time was computers. So I went on and learned everything. I took that money and invested in my education and learned everything that I could about computers, because I didn't want to see myself being a security guard 10, 15, 30 years out. And that was my life. What I'm saying to you is, when you start imagining yourself from who it is that you want to be, do, or have, events and circumstances will begin to present themselves. I was talking about a post, a short recently. I started doing these binary frequency meditations. I got one posted out on YouTube. It's the Tesla frequency. It's for genius, wisdom, wellness, and wealth. So you listen to that for 30 days, 5 to 30 minutes, however long. What happens is, at your core level, it's not even at your thinking level. It bypasses that. But you start processing information differently. You start seeing the world differently. All of a sudden, I started seeing all these wealth opportunities. When I get off this call, there's some things I need to start doing because it's leading me to what it is that I want to do. But my whole point to you is, you're not the same person. But you have to begin operating. Thank you, sir. He was saying that he loved the frequency. He called it cracking. So, but you have to begin operating at a different frequency. You have to, and a lot of times you can go through, therapy and all this other stuff, and you keep living out what we call Groundhog Day. But when you start vibrating at an abundance frequency, at a love frequency, at a health frequency, you're not even going to know that doesn't even appeal to me anymore. You know, that type of food, that type of relationship, that, you know, that type of occupation. I was looking at some opportunities recently, and those things that don't resonate in my spirit, I don't even entertain anymore. Understand this. There's something that you've been created to do. There's something that you've been wired to do. There's that thing out there that you'll start doing it, and it won't even seem like work because you'll be doing what it is that you're in vibration with. You'll love what it is that you want to do and that you're doing and so forth. But first and foremost, you have to begin to believe, even if you don't even know what it is yet, that it's possible. And that's getting into that vibration. So this is you getting into alignment to what it is that you want to be, do, or have. And again, that's the fourth day. Let me move forward because I'm saying we got like 20 minutes. I want to make sure I cover each one of these days, these talking points. So give me a second here. So again, that was alignment into your fourth day. So give me a second here. Thank you. You didn't catch it. I was referencing the free throw. That just means we're on the same page. They were saying that they were referencing something that was being discussed here. Give me a second here. This has been a little challenge as far as the computer. I had to be mindful of what it was that I was going to say. I was going to say something else, and Spirit said, don't say that if that you don't want to see more of that in your life. So I had to pause and catch myself, but give me a second here. What I'm going to start doing is seeing if I can put everything. A lot of times I'll try to compile everything on a one pager. Right now I got several things on several pages, and when you got to scroll through, it seems like it's more challenging. So I'm going to see if I can condense it and put it all on one page so it's not as challenging moving around on the screen. But the fifth day is transcendency. We talk about the fifth day of the birds and the fish. The birds speak of, now you got to understand there's man. When I say man, male, female, made, he, them, so man, male and female. There's the human race. We're operating at the earth level. So when you start operating from the place of the bird and the fish, birds is that elevated thinking. When we're talking about the sea, that's that deep thinking. So once that inspiration, that imagination, when you start visualizing more, being more, having more, you know, and seeing your world, not what apparently is what appears to be showing up right now, but what it is that you want to show up by way of your imagination. Guys, some of you will say, well, Coach, I don't know what it is that I want. Then understand this, if you don't make a decision, the only thing that you can get is more of what you've gotten. Somebody was talking about Greinberg, Jacob Greinberg. And one of the things that he said about the lattice or the matrix is that we often believe that, and I talk about this often, we believe that reality, so-called, is the cause. But science, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, all have determined, CIA, all have determined that it's not reality, but what's being pictured in reality. And this is why they often do blind test studies, because they know that now the studies can be influenced by the person. If he or she has a belief system, for example, then that's going to influence the experiment. The wonderful thing about this whole thing is, if you understand what I'm about to say, your thoughts, and I say, and I know that you heard it many different ways, but I want to press upon you. Your eyes are not seeing reality as it is. Your eyes are perceiving or seeing reality as you think it to be. This is why you got, let's say, potentially 8 billion people in the world. There's religious belief systems, there's religions, and so forth. No two people exactly. B. Johnson was saying that, and I'll get back to my point. B. Johnson was saying that her grandfather lived to be like 97 years old. And B, thanks for giving me less words. I appreciate that. Um, Her grandfather lived to be like, and forgive me, don't know if B. Johnson's he, she, their grandfather lived to be 97 years old. And they were like smoking a pack of cigarettes or more a day, and it didn't affect them. That's belief system. If we believe, I'm going to say this, and I'm trying to say this as politically correct as I can because I don't want to offend anybody, but they've done studies. Going back to B. Johnson's saying, they've done studies, and the studies were these, that children that were educationally challenged, let's say it that way. Like I said, I don't want to be offensive or anything. I used to be one of those children, but children that are educationally challenged and say that they're dealing with like certain mental disabilities and so forth. I don't know what they call them today, but let's use that. And like I said, my goal is not to be, these children, because they didn't know that they were supposed to get sick, didn't get sick. But for the child that believed that, let's say flus or whatever, the, smallpox, whatever, when that was the conversation in that community, more children started to get those ailments, and even with adults. When they're not plugged into the media, for example, and they don't buy into the ideology of the media, many of these people are finding themselves, with studies, this is not DiCarlo coming up with this, studies have proven that many of these people aren't getting sick like everybody else that's been, as it were, told that this stuff makes you sick, for example. What it goes back to is the 97-year-old who's smoking a pack of cigarettes and a half or whatever a day and not getting cancer or whatever, because that's not his or her belief system. I talk often about, a conversation that I had with my sibling, and we were talking about diabetes, and she was saying, well, diabetes runs in our family. And I said, well, no, that's not the case. Diabetes doesn't run in my family, it runs in your family, because that was her predominant belief system. And of course, she's dealing with some of that today, where that's not even an issue with me. People don't like to talk about beliefs creating reality, because what happens is it makes us responsible. Now you say, well, Coach, how does it make us? We start becoming conscious of what it is that we're giving our attention to, what we're believing. If you believe that you can be a multimillionaire, a billionaire, you start living from that belief. It's not enough just to say, I believe it, I believe it, I believe it, but you're not living it. Lifestyle always mirrors what you truly believe. If you say, I'm going to be a multimillionaire, and the only thing you're doing is, at home watching Netflix and watching TV, and you're not building anything out as a vehicle to help you become a multimillionaire, billionaire, it's a pipe dream. Absolutely. Juicy was saying, and I've seen this time and time again, um, she has, somebody in her family, and they've been sick for 3 years, and they keep telling themselves that they're sick, and anybody that will listen to them, they communicate that they're sick. What would happen if we start using, and understand, if that person starts saying, I'm starting to feel better. And, I don't know what it is, but, I'm just feeling lighter. I'm feeling better. They start celebrating, they start laughing. Dr. Cousin, when he was diagnosed with a cancerous disease and only given a few months to live, went into a hotel room and just started bombarding his spirit with humorous videos. And he created a book called The Anatomy of an illness. He was cured from cancer. The whole point is, and I'm not giving medical advice, that's not the goal, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to be mindful of what it is that we're giving our attention to. The other thing that I'm not saying is that Juicy and B. Johnson both sent up, no doubt, and both were saying, listen, you got to be mindful of what it is that you're giving your attention to. And that's my whole point. Guys, give your attention to more of what it is that you want and less of what it is that you don't want. You know, especially like in the Neville Goddard community, you know, you got people that the whole day, 99.9% of the day, they're thinking negative. Then they get into a state akin to sleep and they want to imagine something positive. And they say this stuff doesn't work. Well, your subconscious mind is pulling from what you've given your attention to primarily most of the day. It can't do otherwise. So those few moments, the few moments should complement you thinking positive of what it is that you want to be, do, or have throughout the day. So then when you go into the state akin to sleep, it should complement the rest of your day. That shouldn't offset that negative thinking. It won't offset, let me say it that way, the negative thinking that you've thought throughout the day. So think high ideals. Neville said it this way: think better than the best you know. You got, but understand this, there's a benefit. You keep doing that consistently, your life is going to change because your attitude is going to change. I talked to somebody years ago and she was saying that, you know, she didn't even realize she had a bad attitude until somebody pointed it out to her. She started changing her attitude. She was amazed how much her world started to change. And I've been probably 6 months since I've spoken to her. She's like in Germany or whatever, but the power of changing your thinking, it changed my life. You know, like I said, a kid making less than minimum wage, and then all of a sudden, you know, over a course of time, the truth of the matter is I should have still been like many of my peers working that same old job. Many of these guys, not hating them, they retired at the job that I was working in when I was 16 years old. Many of them made a living from it. I'm not hating or anything like that. I was able to go out and see the world. But I had a shift in mindset, a shift in consciousness. And we're to continue to do that, to grow and outgrow, to grow and outgrow. You're not supposed to be the same person that you were a year ago or even last week. And you're not. As much as you may think that you are, you're not. So let's go into the 6th day. Yeah, absolutely. Now, the question is, if we want to change, then we should clear our minds of limiting beliefs. I'll say this, absolutely. It's easier said than done. If you take on, I just got to clear my mind, don't do it that way. It's like, you know, at the beginning of the year, say, well, I'm going to get on a weight loss program. No, make it a lifestyle change. Don't worry about, I'm going to start reading, you know, at least one positive book or one book. It don't have to be positive, but something's going to uplift me. Like Grinberg's book, you know, here's I can't even think of the science of, if the person that brought Grinberg up, if you remember the name of that book, title of that book, I appreciate it. What I will do, because it's actually out on YouTube, so you can actually listen to the book. Powerful stuff on how the mind works. So, but the whole point is changing a negative belief. Don't focus on trying to change negative beliefs. Don't do that, because what is your focus? Your focus is on changing negative beliefs. So then, of course, the focus is on the negative beliefs. Thank you. Creation of experience. That's exactly what it is. Thank you. Love you. Creation of experience is Grinberg's book. It's on YouTube. So, and there's a couple of them out there. So there's a longer version and there's a shorter version, but they're out there. So, creation of experience. You're creating your experience. Kind of what we're talking about today. And it all starts in imagination. Some people even speculate that about 1989, he just went missing. Some people believe that it was CIA because the information that he was discovering was so powerful that they did not want it out to the public, as it were, the populace. So don't know, that's conspiracy theory. I don't know what happened to him, but that was some people's speculation. So ownership. We move from transcendence, birds, consciousness, high, low. Now we want to talk about ownership, living from a place of dominion. Thank you. When you're talking about looking from a place of dominion, it says that we've been given dominion over the birds. This dominion, you know, you can focus on the outward, but it's really about the inner. When you take dominion of your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your states, your attitudes, Scripture says that, a man that can control his or her inner conversation can control a city. They can control government, they can control everything. We found this to be so. The people that tend to be in power happen to be those who understand how mind works, and they unfortunately use it in an adverse way to control the populace. Start controlling what it is that you're giving your attention to. Just be mindful. Don't try to, you change it by pouring in new information. You listen to Grinberg, for example. You listen to Talbert. His is The Holographic Universe, Michael Talbert. The wonderful book, Holographic Universe. You listen to these programs. You don't have to worry about changing your mind. As you start pouring that new information in, you're going to get new insight, and your mind's going to start changing gradually anyway. The problem is we start getting into communities and, well, you got to change those negative thoughts and blah, blah, blah. You change them by just pouring new information. There's a scripture, but I'm going to give you the metaphysical aspect of the scripture. I'm not just going to give you the God portion of the scripture. But it says, resist the devil and he will flee. Draw near to God and God will draw near to you. It's really saying resist error. I like to say the devil is distorted, erroneous views and limitation, and God is the good that one desires. So resist error and it will flee. But it tells you, but you got to draw near or take on the stuff that you want to be focused on. So the way that you counteract a lot of negative beliefs is that you got to pour new information by listening to teachers and reading books and audio programs and so forth. You can't keep pouring the same poison into your mind. Master teacher said you can't pour old wine into new bottles. That's the bottle. So as you begin pouring new information, new insight, you're like aha moments. The aha moments are rewiring your mind, your psyche, your belief system. As you do that consistently and persistently, you're going to become a different person. Understand this. Everything that you are at the moment is because of all the stuff that you poured into. Most of it's been force-fed to you from the time that you were a child until you became an adult. And a lot of stuff that we believe, we say, oh, I just believe this, I just think this way. No, you didn't just think that way. Somebody taught you to believe that. You owned that belief system and you started living from that belief system, and you became that person that believed that belief system. So and I realized that if I lived somewhere else in the world, I could have potentially been a Buddhist. I could have been a Muslim. Now, it's not to say that I couldn't have been converted in that place, but my predominant beliefs would have been those things that I was taught from the age of infancy to the age of 7. That would have been my indoctrination. So that would have been my core belief. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that stuff couldn't change, because I basically learned, beyond the age of 40 about Neville Goddard, and then my belief system began to change. But I incorporate a lot of what I knew and I carry it forward. So I use scripture because that's my tool. Now, had I been a Muslim, I would have been using the Quran right now and taking from the Quran insights and wisdoms to help you radically change your life forever. Had I been a Buddhist, I would have done likewise. Had I been Hindu, I would have done likewise. You see my point? You work from where you're at. You don't have to change your belief system. You don't have to take on new theology. You take on what it is that you know and allow Spirit to speak to you from that perspective and share your truth, your wisdom, your insights, and change the world. So you take dominion. This is this 6th day. And then I'll close out with the 7th day. So when changing, we only must embrace the change. Absolutely. You embrace the change. And the truth of the matter is, as you come and get on these talks, and as you listen to like Neville Goddard and whomever your teacher is, you're changing. And you're changing beyond what most people in your community, in your belief system, because you're having an insight and a wisdom that's transcending what was known commonly by everybody else in your community. So because it's not the same, because it's different, people are going to label you strange. They're going to label you peculiar. They're going to, sometimes, like I said, I take and talk about spiritual principles. All of a sudden, I'm devil and everything else. I'm demonic, I'm blaspheming and so forth. I just come through the knowledge and wisdom and insight and the revelations that have been given to me to understand that me and Father, I and Father, you and Father, we are one. We're all connected. So there's nothing that I have to do to be right with infinite intelligence. I already am. I'm living from that place because of my rightness, we call righteousness. Likewise with you, there's nothing that you need to do to be right with God. You just need to realize that you already are, that me and Father are one. It says, "Hear, O Israel," Israel, man, woman, who walks, lives, talks as God. "The Lord thy God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." When you do it to another, good, bad, or indifferent, you do it to yourself. Let's go into the last one. So take ownership. That's number 6 is ownership. Living from a place of dominion. That's number 6. 7, the R in the creator process is rest. Understand this, creators. You don't have to do anything to make so what it is that you're imagining. Now, let me clarify. Right now, you're being, doing, and having what it is you're being, doing, and having at the moment. You don't have to force or make, you just naturally be. So let's say we're talking about loving relationships, better health, more money. Once you take on the ideology and you start seeing that as your new reality, and you start living from that, you're not forcing the lifestyle. You just simply be realizing that you are. Just like you're doing right now, being, you've cloaked spirit in an identity called you at the moment. And you say, this is who I am. If you start taking on a more abundant life, likewise, you say, this is just who I am. You start living from that persistently and consistently. Your world's going to start mirroring out, picturing in your reality what it is that you've imagined. It can't do otherwise. But what I'm saying is rest. You don't have to force it. You just simply be it. And the evidence, that's going to happen. The evidence is going to start showing up to affirm that you are that. So the wealth opportunities, the love opportunities, the health opportunities will start showing up. And the only thing you need to do is just step into them. You're not kicking the door down. You're not forcing it. You're just becoming the person that you've clothed spirit in at the moment. Guys, this is Coach DeCarlo. I could go on forever. You know I can. Love you. I appreciate you all for showing up. And for those who may have missed some of the talk, go back and listen to it. It's not a one-time listen because, like I said, there's a whole bunch that I still wanted to say that time didn't permit, but everything that needed to be said has been said. Love you, and I see you next week. Have a great one.